I never imagined my marriage would end the way it did. In the beginning, life with my wife felt like a dream come true. We had been high school sweethearts who reconnected after college, and being together again felt like fate. At 28, I had a steady job, a little starter house in the suburbs, and big plans for the future. When Emily, let's call her Emily, came back into my world, it was as if all the pieces fell into place. Our wedding was a picture-perfect June day, with sunny skies, close family, and my best friends by my side. I remember standing at the altar watching Emily walk down the aisle in her white dress, thinking I was the luckiest man alive. She looked at me with those bright green eyes and that warm smile, and I truly believed we were about to start our happily ever after. In those early years, everything felt possible. We hosted barbecues for 4th of July, took road trips on long weekends, and spent quiet Sunday mornings cuddled on the couch, dreaming about the kids we might have someday. Life wasn't perfect, no marriages, but we were happy. Or at least, I was. Looking back now, I realize there were small warning signs I chose to ignore. Emily always had a taste for the finer things in life. She'd mention wanting a bigger house, a new car, nicer clothes. I brushed it off as normal ambition. I wanted to give her the world, so I worked harder. I pulled extra hours at the office, aiming for that promotion that could fund the life she dreamed of. When my mom offered to help us get a better home by contributing to the down payment, we jumped at it. We left my tiny starter home and moved into a larger 2-story house on Maple Street, a place with a wraparound porch and enough room for the future family we planned. The only catch was that the deed to the house was in my mother's name. Mom insisted on that arrangement to protect her investment while we got on our feet. At the time, neither Emily nor I thought much of it. We were just grateful to have a beautiful home to build our future in. Emily was so excited running from room to room, imagining curtains, furniture, and a whole future in that space. For a while, life in that house was really good. But as months turned into years, our lives began to change. I got that promotion and started working even longer hours to impress my new boss. Emily found a job she loved at a trendy boutique downtown. We were both busy, and our date nights slowly faded away. I'd come home exhausted to find her already asleep, or she'd be out with her new friends from work. We started drifting apart without even realizing it. I remember one night, coming home late after a 12-hour shift. Dinner was cold on the stove, and there was a note saying she'd gone out with friends. I ate alone at the kitchen island under a dim light, wondering when we had last sat down together to share a meal. Little distances were growing between us, missed phone calls, texts unanswered for hours, and conversations that felt like chores. If I knew then what I know now, maybe I would have tried harder to bridge that gap. Maybe I would have asked her what was really on her mind, instead of assuming we were just in a temporary rut. But I was naive. I told myself that rough patches were normal and that we'd bounce back. After all, we loved each other, right? We had vowed, for better or for worse. I just never expected that the worse would come so soon, or that it would be far worse than anything I'd imagined. Little did I know, a storm was already on the horizon. Everything I held dear was about to be swept away. The unraveling of my marriage wasn't a sudden explosion. It was a series of small cracks that suddenly shattered all at once. The turning point came on a rainy Wednesday evening. I'll never forget it, because I came home early, hoping to surprise Emily with takeout from her favorite Thai place. I pulled into our driveway and noticed a sleek red BMW parked out front, a car I didn't recognize. I walked inside with the smell of pad thai in the air, and that's when I heard low voices coming from the living room. Emily's voice, and a man's voice. My heart pounded as I crept toward the doorway. I peeked in to see Emily on the couch with a man I'd never seen before. They weren't even touching, but the way they sat close and laughed softly told me everything. I felt my stomach twist. I stood frozen in the hallway as I heard my wife laugh at something. The man said a laugh I hadn't heard from her in a long time, carefree and warm. My hand was shaking so badly that I bumped against the doorframe, and suddenly their laughter stopped. Emily jumped up, eyes wide, and the man leapt to his feet. For a moment, none of us knew what to say. The silence was deafening. Finally, I found my voice. "What's going on?" I asked, barely above a whisper. The man, looking embarrassed, mumbled an apology and practically bolted past me out the door into the pouring rain. I'll never forget the look on Emily's face. At that moment, her eyes were full of panic at being caught in a terrible lie. She opened her mouth as if to explain, but we both knew no words could fix this. That night, we had the biggest fight of our lives. Years of frustration and suspicion poured out. She admitted she'd been seeing that guy from her gym for a few weeks, but swore it never went too far. "Betrayal is betrayal," I yelled. She cried. By midnight, I was alone in our bedroom, staring at the ceiling while she sobbed in the guest room. I wanted to comfort her, despite everything, but I couldn't. The next few days were tense and silent. When we tried to talk, it just turned into circular blame, she said. I neglected her. I said I was working hard for us. We were both angry and hurt. The damage was already done. A week later, Emily handed me divorce papers, tears in her eyes. I wasn't surprised, but it still felt like a punch to the gut. Signing those papers was the hardest thing I've ever done. My hand shook as I ended 5 years of marriage with a few strokes of a pen. I felt like a total failure. But if I thought the worst was over then, I was sorely mistaken. The heartache of our breakup was just the beginning. Next came the divorce settlement, and that's when things went from sad to downright vicious. At first, we tried to keep things civil. We even sat down together and listed out our belongings, the car, the furniture, our savings, even the little knickknacks from our trips. I foolishly thought we could split everything fairly, like adults. But then lawyers got involved, and everything changed. One morning, I found a thick envelope shoved under my door. Inside was a list of demands that made my heart sink. She wanted the car, half of my retirement savings, hefty alimony payments, most of our furniture and appliances, and even our dog, Baxter. She basically wanted to leave me with nothing. Reading through her demands, I felt the air leave my lungs. This wasn't the woman I fell in love with. This was someone who wanted to strip me of everything I had. That notice kicked off a nasty legal battle that dragged on for months. As the weeks went by, it seemed like Emily was winning. A temporary court order even had me move out of the house and let her stay there, so I crashed on my buddy Dan's couch. She kept the car, so I was riding the bus to work. Meanwhile, a chunk of my paycheck went to her in temporary alimony. I was basically funding her new life, while mine was falling apart. The lowest point came one chilly Saturday when I went back to the house to pick up my remaining things. She had boxed up my clothes and personal mementos and left them in the garage for me. I stood in the empty living room. Most of the furniture was gone. Even our wedding photo was off the mantel. Baxter, our golden retriever, wasn't there either. She wouldn't even let me see him. I sank to the floor and finally broke down in sobs. My wife was gone, my dog was gone, my home and belongings were gone. In that moment, I felt like I had nothing left. But I was wrong. There was one thing she had forgotten, one thing she could never take away. In my mind, she had won. Emily had taken nearly everything that mattered from me. I was a ruined man, kneeling on the cold hardwood of an empty house, feeling utterly defeated. But our story wasn't over yet. There was still one thing she couldn't take from me, one thing she'd forgotten. The final divorce hearing arrived on a cold December morning. I sat outside the courtroom with my lawyer, hands clammy and heart pounding. I had no fight left in me. I was ready to sign whatever I needed to and end this nightmare. My mom sat beside me, squeezing my shoulder for support. She kept whispering that, somehow, things would work out. I wasn't so sure. When we walked into that courtroom, I felt a pit in my stomach. Emily was already there with her attorney, looking polished and composed. She didn't so much as glance in my direction. I took a deep breath, sat down at our table, and braced myself for the final blow. The proceedings began routinely, reviewing the few agreements we'd managed to reach. I would keep my personal items and my pension. She would keep the car and a portion of our savings. I had agreed to give her a larger share of the cash assets and some support for a short time, just to be done with it all. It felt like swallowing glass, but I nodded along, eager to get this over with. Then we came to the last and biggest point of contention. The house on Maple Street, our home. Her lawyer, sounding very self-assured, argued that Emily deserved either full ownership of the house or half its value. He talked about how she had contributed to our household and how it was only fair she reap the benefits. I could feel my heart thudding in my chest. Even though I wasn't living there anymore, losing that house, the home my mom helped us get, the last solid thing in my life, would have been a final, crushing blow. I also knew I could never afford to buy out what Emily claimed was her share. I gripped the edge of the table so hard my knuckles turned white. Emily's attorney kept talking about fairness, about contributions, about how much she supposedly sacrificed. I hung my head, convinced this was it. I was about to lose the house too. That's when my lawyer calmly stood up. "Your Honor," he said, "the house in question is not marital property. The deed has never been in my client's name. It is, in fact, owned by a third party, his mother." He handed a document to the judge as he spoke, a certified copy of the deed. There was a beat of silence as the judge looked over the paperwork. You could have heard a pin drop. I glanced over at Emily. Her confident expression faltered as the realization hit her. Back when we got the house, neither of us cared that my mom's name was on the deed. It hadn't mattered then. But now, it mattered a whole lot. Her lawyer looked completely thrown off. He stammered something about how Emily had assumed the house was jointly owned and how she had helped pay for things related to it. The judge raised his hand to cut him off. In a clear voice, he said, "Counselor, if the property is owned by Mr. ___'s mother, it is not part of the marital estate. Your client has no legal claim to it." I will never forget the mixture of shock and frustration on Emily's face. She opened her mouth as if to argue, but no sound came out. She had forgotten about that detail, and now it was undoing her plans. Meanwhile, I sat there in disbelief, a rush of relief flooding through me. I hadn't allowed myself to hope for any kind of win, not after everything else. But suddenly, there it was, a glimmer of justice. Emily was stunned. For once, she had no retort. I didn't gloat or smile. I was too drained for any big reaction. I simply closed my eyes and let out the breath I'd been holding for months. Beside me, I felt my mom reach over and squeeze my hand. Her idea to keep the house in her name had saved me, just like she'd quietly hoped it would. The rest of the hearing was a blur. In the end, the judge finalized our divorce and its terms. I would pay her a modest settlement and short-term alimony, and she'd walk away with the car, a decent chunk of money. And yes, even my dog. But she didn't get everything. She didn't get the house. Outside the courthouse, we faced each other one last time in the frosty winter air. No more fights, no dramatics, just two people who used to love each other, standing on opposite sides of a chasm that had formed between us. She gave me a weak, tremulous smile and said quietly, "I guess this is it." I nodded, swallowing the lump in my throat. "I hope you find what you're looking for," I managed to reply. She hesitated, eyes glistening as she whispered, "I'm sorry." I believed she meant it in that fleeting moment. I nodded again, not trusting myself to speak. There really wasn't anything left to say. She turned and walked away, heading toward that sleek BMW waiting in the parking lot. I watched her go, feeling a bittersweet mix of relief, sadness, and closure as I turned to leave with my mom. In the weeks that followed, I moved back into the Maple Street house, now truly my home, with Mom's blessing. It felt strange at first, living there alone, surrounded by echoes of the past. But bit by bit, I set about making the place mine again. I repainted walls, replaced furniture that held painful memories, and slowly transformed that house from a battlefield of our past into the foundation of my future. Mom even helped me adopt a puppy from the local shelter, a rambunctious black lab mix to bring some life and warmth back into the rooms that had felt so empty. Healing was a slow process. Some mornings I'd wake up expecting to smell Emily's coffee or hear her singing in the shower, and then I'd remember she was gone. But day by day, it hurt a little less. My mom dropped by often with groceries or just to chat, and we grew closer than we'd been in years. I leaned on my friends, and I even went to therapy to work through the pain and anger. Little by little, I rebuilt my life and my confidence. My wife took everything in the divorce, almost everything. She walked away with a lot, and for a while I truly felt broken. But she forgot one thing. The house was in my mom's name. Because of that, when the dust settled, I still had a home where I could rebuild. And more importantly, she couldn't take away the support of my family, the love of my friends, or my determination to keep going. Losing almost everything showed me something priceless. I'm stronger than I ever realized. Now, here I am, standing on the front porch of the Maple Street house, watching a new sunrise and ready to start over. The storm has passed, and I survived, battered but not broken. As I lock the door and step out into the cold morning air, I know one thing for sure. She could never take away my hope for the future.